Garrett.
Hello.
Just for the record, for our audio purposes, we've got Patrick, we've got Matt Hopwagner, Liz Sanford, Enid St. James, Matt Bandel is online, we've got Bobby Canto, and myself and Garrett Daigle are present.
All right.
It's 6:08.
Yeah, happy Wednesday. All right.
Wednesday. Okay, so I'm gonna jump in. Meeting minutes were sent from the last one. It was approved Monday night. There were some action items for July 17th meeting. It should have been 19th meeting. It was researching commercial linkage fees, looking into some data for the high school's system and developer panel, and review of town ordinances. I'm going to actually tackle this in reverse order. So the review of town ordinance 12 and 31. 12 is the housing trust fund, and 31 is the housing authority and committees. I took a look at them, and what I wanted to do, for me, it was a reminder to make sure we were clear on the process, that when we're ready to do this and start pulling these pieces together, the change to the ordinances happens it happens with town council, and it's a public hearing process. So staff will draft it, you folks will take a look at it, make sure that it's consistent with what our vision was for inclusionary zoning or whatever it is we're doing. It'll go to town council for public hearing, so they'll notice it, and then 1 month out, then have a public hearing, and then it's after 30 days, it's ratified, depending on comments or whatever comes through. So fairly straightforward, so it's no different than when we do really a regulation change. So
Process in place.
the process it's process in place, and it's not overly laborious.
We did that with like parking, right? Didn't parking have to go, wasn't there an ordinance change for parking, or am I mistaken?
So when we did the opt-out for the Public Act 2129 for the 2 opt-out items, TPZ had to vote to opt out, but then it had to go to town council to be finalized, their approval. So similar but different. It's more similar when we have a historic district, and we're adding properties into the historic district, but yeah.
I want to stop you for a minute, not to go way back, but Bobby, are you aware of the moratoriums that are in place that we recently extended till October, right?
Housing. Yeah.
Okay. So
To October 1st.
why we're having this meeting, but, okay. Just,
And there's an affordable housing plan that we have.
the town adopted in 2021.
And on our agenda reviews, on our regular meeting, when I send out the agenda reviews, at the bottom is the work session. So we've got planners report, work session, and then there's a hyperlink on that. It brings you to a OneDrive that has, it'll look like this. So it's got, the affordable housing plan is in here, the adopted affordable housing plan. We've got some legislative information. There was a thing we put in the winter newsletter, the moratorium presentation questions that fellow commissioners have asked, and then staff responses to those. Our housing ordinance that I just made reference to, inclusionary zone and light touch development. So it'll look very similar to that on the OneDrive. So that's kind of a mishmash of the things that we're starting to take a look at. But they're all there kind of, so if you just grab whatever agenda review, hit that link, it'll bring you to that, and you can pop in and out of it. And everyone should have access. So if you find something that you want to share, you should be able to drop it in there. You can email it to me and I can do it. But I set it up so that it wasn't read only, it's a read and edit. So you should be able to drop stuff in there if you are looking at something else yourself or see an article you want to share, you can do it that way.
And there has been a lot, right, of affordable housing and housing in general, which is good.
It's a huge topic in Connecticut, and not just Connecticut, but we're certainly kind of seem to be hyper-focused on it. So anyway, so that was one of the action items that we talked about. Developer panel, I have not had a chance to reach out to any of the developers yet that I wanted to contact, so I'm hoping in the next once we finished last week, I then had to go into getting ready for last Monday night, so I didn't get a gap to make those phone calls. So, I hope to do that before the end of the week, because we meet again on Monday night to so we'll see.
I have a question about that. I was just thinking of, I read the minutes and whatnot, and, I was thinking about housing, I was thinking about where am I going? Should any of the employers be part of it, like any of the large ones? To listen in or be at least invited, like a Yukon or Jackson Lab or, I don't know, anyone that's struggling with housing right now?
So we can, I think it's two different focuses. So the developer, I think we had talked, the developer panel was more, I was thinking of getting a couple of developers and perhaps, seeing if Tim Hollister or Andrea Gomes, from Hinkley Allen, who did the legal team for 80 South Road for Jeff and Phoebe Sager.
Yep.
I was gonna reach out to see if Andrea's available. But I think it's a different, so the employers is the need-based, which we're really getting that feedback from Rose. Rose hears it repeatedly already.
Would Rose be in this meeting, or?
She can be, and we get invited, so she can be. But the purpose of having the developer panel was to say, okay, we're looking at a fee in lieu, we're looking at inclusionary zoning in a fee in lieu structure. What has been your experience in other communities? What are you finding that works and is truly functional and implementable? And what are some complete deal breakers for you? And kind of trying to figure out where, what I'm referring to as a tipping point of what that fee, the mandated percentages are. So the employers aren't going to be able to participate in that conversation because they're just looking like, hey, we need workforce housing for our people. So whether it's restaurant people or supermarkets or, Yukon and their support staff versus, their medical doctors coming in. So there's different. So those are just the price range needs that we already know there's a gap. We already know there's a need there.
Just to me, it's, I'm fair. I totally understand where you're going from, what you're saying, and we also want to have a productive meeting, right? Like sometimes if we have too many people or too many opinions, like nothing gets done. But, just the whole community thing that to me, like, should be part of it, but maybe not yet.
And again, no different than these, people know about them, it's posted on the website, they're recorded, the agenda's posted, so the agenda's distributed. We just have,
Maybe it's a Rose ask, just to say, hey, employers, big partners, I don't know, this is just my, whatever, somewhere like, this is what we're doing, or this is what we're planning on doing. Maybe not the invite, but just so they're aware, or.
We did publish something, right? In the,
We did, so that's the winter newsletter
Right.
posted up there, so there was a,
Right.
because the newsletter goes
Here?
to every home, but, yeah, so that's.
We gotta call every homeowner. No, but unless you're on TPZ, no, seriously, it's tough, right? It's tough. People, typically don't know what happens here. Communication is always a huge one when we campaign. So that's it. I just wanted, when I read it, I wanted you to know what I was thinking, because I love to always tell you what I'm thinking. Okay, so, thank you.
So I'm hoping to have the time to make those phone calls in the next few days and provide more feedback then on Monday. Farmington is FHS, but it's really the Farmington school system data on students receiving, it's reduced lunch and free lunch. So I did reach out to Board of Ed. They got back very quickly, which was nice. And they provided me with a link to, what is it called? It's Ed site, Board of Ed, free and reduced lunch data. Ed site, Farmington report card. So it's a public, it was interesting. I went into the weeds as only, I suppose, an engineer can.
So they break it down by school?
Well, you can do it by district.
District
too.
and school, okay.
So,
It's interesting.
wow. So that gives us our total student, well, high school population, right? So blah, blah, blah. So, but when you look at some of the student statistics, over here, so it's percentage eligible for reduced meals. So you're getting, in blue is the school itself, the yellowish is the district overall, and then the state overall. So the state overall over the last 3 years is running just around 40-ish%. And we're thankfully less than half that, so.
Went down.
Yeah, so we went down. Yeah. Well, which is interesting because it.
We're at home?
It didn't, exactly align with what had been discussed conversationally, so it was actually a little lower.
Yeah.
And when I drill into our elementary schools, right, there's certainly differences between the elementary, our 4 elementary schools, but, Westwood's upper elementary and IAR, of course, because everybody's come together, those percentages are pretty closely aligned here. So when you look at it, I mean, you can see it just right. So when you look at district and each, these are all pretty close to each other. So what I can't get from them, and I figured I was going fishing, and I can have a chat with Scott Hurwitz. I haven't had an opportunity to do that. Can't get a drill down into, of that, whatever, 15, call it 16% now with it would have been just the school year that just closed out, 16%. Of the 16%, what percentage of those students are living in one of our affordable housing communities versus they're living in some other apartment or housing, single-family housing complex. So that information was not readily available. I certainly understood they couldn't do it student by student or neighborhood by neighborhood, but, and they'd have to really, it would be, I'm guessing, fairly labor-intensive to try to drill in, because you'd have to take those students, and then I know what all the housing developments are. They'd have to actually manually go through and run that. So, and keep it sanitized, right, so that I don't have access to any other information, right? It's just numbers. So,
Shannon, can I ask just a quick clarification? So you said you looked at the different schools for the time, so you said they weren't statistically different, right? One school wasn't.
Union, Noah Wallace, or, yeah, I can bring them up.
No, it's okay. I was just curious if there's, if we think about parts of town, right? You know what I'm saying?
There weren't differences.
Okay, it's not material.
I'm not saying there weren't differences.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would be surprised with the differences that we're showing,
Okay.
but it wasn't that, one's at 90% and one's at.
Right, nothing sort of,
Right,
okay.
so they're all kind of
That's what I was
floating in,
Yep.
like, I'm gonna say 5 to 8%
Okay,
of this
Yeah,
median,
yeah,
if
yeah.
we're gonna call this the average.
yeah,
There's certainly a couple,
sure, of course.
right, so, yeah, I'm not saying that there wasn't any, it just wasn't a difference.
Yeah, okay.
And you can go back
Clarify that.
and look at all this.
Yeah, no, I was
Well, and you can look at every
just,
school in the state.
oh, sorry, yep.
You know, and so that's what I did.
Yeah.
Like, I looked at, I opened up
Burlington, you could do.
Glastonbury, I opened up Glastonbury, Avon, and Canton.
Okay.
And all I did was I looked at the high schools for each,
Right.
and it's broken out the same way, so the district, right, they show the high school, district, and state. So it's all the same. Glastonbury's percentages are notably lower.
High school? Because high school is almost,
So the
high school
district,
is 2,000 kids in Glastonbury.
yeah,
Mhm.
the percentage
Right.
is about half of ours with the students.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that,
Very right, but.
You know what I mean?
What,
one other thing that's involved in that is, do they consider the open choice kids?
I don't know how that,
Because they are, in general, they're Hartford residents, but they're Farmington students.
right,
So I don't know, and each school has a different, no, but,
I don't know how that, and I don't know if there's enough that swings that.
that's what I'm not sure either across the district, I don't know total numbers.
Okay, not quite half, sorry.
Okay, but still.
Glastonbury's up at 13%, so we're at, I
We
said.
were at 16.
They went up 2%, up 2%.
But they're,
hold on one second, because Matt is on the phone. He probably is having a hard time following us. Patrick and Bobby.
I'm keeping up.
You are, okay.
Yeah.
All right, then I'm not keeping up. All right. So,
so Glastonbury has, we're just over 4,100 in our total student population, so they're at 56, say 57. And so percentage-wise, they're at 13, we were at 16, so it's not as big a disparity as I.
how big
But
of
they are going up, they are trending. They were 11 something, I mean,
Yeah.
year to year, I don't know how.
It's like 100
14.
students, you know, I think.
Yeah, so
Right.
you're looking, yeah, it was
You can mess with
14.
numbers. Better with
So
numbers.
why were we asking, and I'm gonna sound really crazy, but why are these numbers important to what we're doing?
So it was, some of it was curiosity on my part because we're having redistricting conversations, right? So it's redistricting, it's the apartment complexes, and now affordable housing, and the superintendent saying, what do you need to mean you need more affordable housing? Our percentages are way over 10% of our students in need, right? And I said, all right, show me your numbers, right? Let's see, I'm trying to figure out where this all lands. So again, we had been at 18%, we're at 16 now, so that's 16 to 18%. I was hoping to get some information on housing to be able to split that percentage out further to provide some connectivity, but that's okay. What I went back to then was our affordable housing plan.
Yep.
And the affordable housing plan, on page 9 of the affordable housing plan, runs through and lets us know that Farmington has almost 3,000 households, which is 28% of our total households who make less than 80% of the area median income. So we have 28% of the households of Farmington would be considered, I would say, in need. I haven't drilled into, I can follow up with Scott to figure out what are the thresholds for a student qualifying? You know, do they go by the family median income, and at what threshold is it free lunch versus reduced lunch? I don't know what those thresholds are. I don't know if it matters. That's really not what we're looking at anyway. For me, it was trying to figure out, the school district has one set of concerns, and TPZ's coming at this from another angle.
Yeah.
So it would seem that, okay, that 16%-ish
Yep.
is less than the 28% that we have of a total community need from a household standpoint. Kind of intuitively makes sense because we have seniors that would qualify, that are in this percentage, single individuals that are in this percentage that aren't a family, and there aren't children associated with these households that are in our school district. So our school district need is less than what the community need is, it intuitively kind of made
Yeah.
sense to me.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably as good as we're going to get. And I think too, as part of the conversation with the school district is that these family, right, based on, as part of the conversation that we've already had on this, is that these families are already in Farmington.
Mhm.
And what there is likely happening is they're paying more than 30% of their income on housing, which is then also then necessitating assistance for food, assistance for fuel, assistance for a variety of other things in order to sustain their household. Or they're on Section 8 vouchers, and that's how they're sustaining, so they're not hitting that 30% of their income or over it, but Section 8 vouchers. So, for me, it was just looking at it to try to figure out where are we, and as Nancy Parent says, look, these folks are already here, we're not necessarily drawing folks in from the outside with these affordable housing initiatives. We're trying to figure out how to accommodate the people that are
Meet the
here
needs,
and
yeah.
meet those needs appropriately, because there's definitely a disparity on the, what the available housing is, because we talked about that. So there's, we said, 2,950 households, and on the flip side, the availability we have is 875 homes.
When you say, when you say 30% of their income on housing, what is that exactly? How do they, so what, was that?
I think it's an, government calculation
No, but I
anyway.
mean, like, what exactly is it, are they counting, right? When you say housing, the mortgage, is it the?
I think it's, so if you're looking at it's somebody that's paying rent, and then there's a subset of that for utilities, if I recall the
I think that is for for our affordable housing calculations, but I think in general, it's just seen as no more than 30% of your income is going towards your housing costs.
Anything that.
Could be taxes, isn't
I think taxes and
mortgage or.
Yeah.
Well, if you're paying a mortgage, you're usually considering that because your taxes are part of your mortgage.
Right, but
But if you're renting, then technically your landlord's paying the taxes, but.
Utilities as well, though, or is it?
Not always.
I think
Stanford has it spiked out,
Yes, yes.
that's what I was reading, that.
yeah, but not everyone does.
Yeah, I think it's separate, because it goes back to HUD,
Mhm.
right? And HUD is very programmatic about how these numbers are calculated, so that it's done the same way from coast to coast. So I'm fairly, I don't think the utilities are included in that, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a rent that includes utilities, then yeah, it would be
Right.
part of it, but.
Yeah. What they do, households are, about 30% of Farmington's households are cost burdened. Seniors, young adults, renters, low-income households making 80% cost burden. So it's, again, it's that housing cost greater than 30% of their income on housing. To your point, yeah, I think I don't think you.
Other support, if you can't, you know, you can't pay your rent, you probably are getting food and other stuff.
Right.
Right, but we see, right, in our utility bills about how assistance with the electric bills and all that, all those different programs that are in place. So, so again, I looked into that because it was more about understanding, as we're looking at redistricting and all the different conversations that are taking place, right, these all overlap, and trying to understand what they're seeing and what their concern is and how that fits in with what we're doing.
Redistricting, something you think that will happen before we review this again? I mean, we're reviewing it now, but you know, how this,
So the redistricting plan, the committee, met in the spring, and then we're not meeting again until the fall, and there'll be new numbers. There's some benchmark numbers that are done in September or October. I don't remember all the different terms, because it's not the field I play in all the time. But some numbers, forecasting numbers, are done again in the fall. And I think it's those numbers then that they use for forecasting classrooms for that next school year, right? So it's,
Yep.
and then when you're not talking calendar years, it gets a little wonky, but, so it's, they forecast in the fall, where were we at, 23, so, right, so it's 23, 24, right, this fall, for the 24, 25 school year. And so it's those numbers that they use then for state aid and assistance and figuring out demand and teachers and all those other things.
Even down to what level sports we're participating in.
Okay.
Oh, no way, okay.
Well, that has to do with student population.
Yeah. So, so anyhow, that'll happen in the fall, and then, I think there's community meeting, and so there's a couple of different things that are still going on. And then it'll be, I think, a recommendation from this committee back to Board of Ed as to what the recommendations are for how to address this in short-term, long-term, whatever. So what we're doing, so there's probably like a 2-year, year and a half, 2-year thing. We're gonna be ahead of that, presumably.
Thank you. Where does this all fit?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Matthew, you're good with us still?
Still good.
All right.
Okay, the last thing that was an action item from last week was looking at, coming back to inclusionary zone.
Yeah.
And inclusionary zoning and fee in lieu, which we said kind of go hand in hand. And then the commercial linkage fee that goes with it and the Connecticut General Statute, applicability. At this point, I'm gonna turn it over to my colleague, because he did the research on it. So just walk them through what you looked at and what you found out, so.
So I know Matt Bandel had shared the, Stanford ordinance, which had changed from 5% to 10%. And I spoke to Stanford as part of this research, and they've had that fee in place for about the past 20 years. So they call it their below market rate housing program. It's the affordable housing program. So I did more research into linkage fees, and it kind of self-explanatory. They're fees imposed on commercial development, trying to link that commercial development to a housing need. It's usually recommended for areas which are experiencing a large increase in housing and commercial development, because that's where you'll get the most amount of money quickly to build up a fund to address that affordable housing. But it's most often used in areas where either the state or local regulations have banned inclusionary zoning fees as part of the development. San Francisco, actually, there was a court case that they implemented an inclusionary housing fee. However, it was determined that was a violation of their rent control ban, so they went with a linkage fee instead to the commercial housing. There are some places where they use a linkage fee for market rate and luxury housing, as that leads to an increase in demand for services, which are usually low-paying jobs, so trying to offset if everyone's building luxury housing, there's no one to provide those services. Yes.
The 10% is a fee based on the permit fee?
Yeah, so.
That's right. Just in case you didn't read it.
That's the research
Yeah, Stanford does it a little different.
Yeah.
So we'll get to the math. So do the explanation, and we'll get to the math on some of it, because Stanford does it different than any of the other ones that we've seen so far.
So I did some research into the linkage fee programs, and some more information. So that was in the email I sent to Shannon, and that you can access it too. One of the resources in inclusionary housing group, where I pull a lot of information from that. It's a pretty good website. And then I found another affordable housing group that's partnered with New York University. So that's where I got a lot of the general information on linkage fees. And in those articles, there's also some examples of cities that have used those linkage fees. Boston's has been in place since about the 80s. And obviously, it's a city, so they've gotten a lot of money to build a lot of affordable housing.
It's a cool idea, though.
Yes. So Stanford.
And it's easy, right?
Well,
So-
it's easier.
I implement.
So, yeah.
So Stanford's fee functions more like an inclusionary housing fee. What it is it says, the way their ordinance is written, it says annually. So we'll assume that at the end of the fiscal year, of all the building permit fees they collected for commercial developments in that year, 10% of it goes to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Annually.
As opposed to charging a fee on top of the building permit fee. Stanford's building permit fee for commercial development is $16.50 per $1,000 of estimated construction value. For context, Farmington's is 15. So theoretically, if we increased
What
it
is
to $16.50, we could,
So a volume though, like, because Stanford, I looked at, they have 135,000 people that live in Stanford.
Yes.
So you're gonna have more,
yeah.
everything.
You're inherent to everything, right? You have more, there's more cash coming in for
Right.
road, but there's more cash going out for services
Yeah.
and needs and everything else, yeah.
If we follow this, just kick me and I will stop. If we follow this, what you just said, the 10% annually, like for, I don't know what volume we get in town. Like,
So
is that,
I've got,
okay.
I have that
All right, fine.
number, I've got that, yep, it's in the, so I want him to finish going through this, and then we're gonna go through, and I'll, I've run through, I went through, I took a look at our annual report, so I've got the numbers, but yeah.
So Stanford's fee is taken out of their building permit revenues as just a percentage allocation at the end of the fiscal year. New Canaan has and Stanford's is part of their town ordinances. New Canaan has an inclusionary zoning fee of $10 per $1,000 of construction value. That is in their zoning regulations, so it's a zoning fee as part of their building permit fee.
And that's on everything, right? If,
Yes, everything. There are exceptions. However, if it's a development with affordable housing in it, the market rate units have to pay that $10 per $1,000 valuation fee. In a true linkage fee program, you have a study done by a consultant called a nexus study, which quantifies the link between the commercial development and the demand for housing in your town. And then technically that recommends a fee. Most of the time the fee is set much lower than what the study recommends to kind of make it a defensible position that it's not a constitutional taking, devaluing your property, and.
developers, right?
Right.
Not right.
Well, it's trying to figure out what that, again, that happy medium is, so that we can start to generate the revenue without ending up in court for 6 years.
Right.
But without turning developers away too, right?
And without,
Yeah.
right, and without just bringing everything to a screeching halt, right.
So for example, again, Stanford, just concluding, Stanford's is $16.50 per 1,000 square feet, $1,000 of construction value, I'm sorry, and a percentage of that is just put into their affordable housing fund. New Canaan charges theirs on top of their building permit fee, but their fee is also a little bit different. And then Farmington's is just, currently, we just have $15 per 1,000 square feet. I can look at, if we want, I can look at other towns. I know Plainville is about $20 per $1,000 of, estimated cost. We can look at what other towns are charging for their fee to determine whether it would be a huge increase. I mean, that would probably be a discussion with the.
Building fee?
Yeah, so it's, when you apply for a building permit, you give an estimated cost of work, let's say it's $500,000, so your fee is $15 for every $1,000. There's usually a state fee, I think it's 26 cents for every 1,000 on top of that.
And is Stanford the one that redirects some of that money
Yeah,
into
so annually-
a trust? housing
Right, so at the end of their
Right.
fiscal year, they just
Yeah.
take 10% of it, and
Right.
it goes into their housing trust
And in
fund.
other towns, through the land use regulations, charges a
Yeah.
separate fee, which goes into a separate fund.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So, and we could do, so Stanford sweeps a portion of the building fee that's already been taken in. Now, whether or not they elevated it.
Yeah, right.
And then, so they could have elevated it and then said, okay, we're taking 10% of that.
Right.
I don't. we
Yeah,
haven't really
understood.
dig into
Yeah.
the weeds on that. Farmington, I know we wouldn't just leave it as is and then sweep that 10% because those funds are utilized, you know,
earmarked
to a
over
certain percentage, right? Because obviously, year in and year out, that building permit, fee that we, accumulate varies year to year, right? So it's not a dependable, solid line item, but it is factored in the overall budget for Farmington.
Yeah,
Um,
just a comment on that, it's interesting, right, you're increasing building permits for everything, regardless of affordable housing or not, right? And
Right.
but then we're deciding that, no matter if you're building affordable or not, we are gonna, we charge it whatever more, you can sweep that in versus specific to land use regulations, that's specific to affordable housing.
Right.
So,
Right.
right, if you're just doing it for building permits in general, you don't necessarily have to worry about, is this project affordable housing or not, right?
Correct.
Again, in terms of the maintenance, right, this trust fund maintenance for existing affordable properties. Okay,
And
thank
do
you.
it, so some of them are quite specific and said, for new construction or additions, but if it was just an interior renovation, right, then it didn't. Right, so it did,
Building permit can encompass anything from putting a shed up, a
Right.
pool.
Oh, yeah.
fence.
so we can be specific and we can start to drill into that even further, but some of them did get kind of specific and, again, Garrett's read more than I have on this, but the ones I was looking at, it did talk about, expansions and new construction and excluded an interior renovation. And that may have been this New Canaan one that I've got up there.
We don't have that much land left.
Right.
It's really, thinking of developers coming in and converting a commercial property into residential, and then converting X amount of that as percent affordable and/or, right, a fee in lieu of attached to that to convert into a trust fund, right?
So,
Yeah.
right, so the idea would be to, in that case, when it's a complete change, I think the fee would be appropriate, even though it's still an interior renovation, right? So that's, right.
Yep.
But the exclusion would apply to somebody like a homeowner,
Yeah, right.
right? If they're just renovating their master bath or their kitchen or whatever, that it obviously wouldn't apply. But a homeowner that's doing a addition to their house and doubling the size of their home, absolutely, then it would start to apply, or on any of the new homes. And I think for Farmington, it would be more, we'd have to add in a fee. We'd either raise our building permit fee or just add in a separate, linkage fee or an inclusionary zone fee. And I did look at the numbers, I know you're
I
dying.
know, I am.
Okay, so.
It's like the big reveal.
For fiscal year, 21-22, we had roughly 1.2 million in building permit fees. It's broken down on a variety of things, so I didn't separate out, right, if they were interior, like, you know, an electrical permit or whatever, but, so if you, say we had the benefit of that that full 1.2 million, and we went with a $10 per thousand, a permit fee, you end up with $12,000.
That's it?
I think so.
Yeah.
1.2.
Right. Yeah,
That's maybe like renovating one of our,
but it, okay,
repairing one of our properties.
Per year.
but per year.
So 5 years,
And it's-
100,000, right?
Okay, okay, go ahead, yeah.
Well, yeah, 60.
Sorry.
Yeah, but whatever the interest rates are and how it gets invested and whatnot, and,
But you know it's not the entire thing either.
yeah,
Okay.
so,
But it's a revenue stream.
it's something.
Right.
Right now, there's nothing.
Correct.
So it is something, and it doesn't prevent, so that's a flat fee that can come across on everything, right out of the gate. It doesn't prevent then still having the inclusionary zone and the fee in lieu when you do the residential. So this is just a straight, affordable housing fee, or however we want to phrase it, housing trust fee, that's assigned
Yep.
here. And then we would have to find in the town ordinances where all the fees are, somewhere in the town ordinance.
Yeah,
it sets
it's all
the fees.
all of our fees are all in one spot.
So it sets all the fees in the town ordinance, and we would have to modify that to add that in on the town ordinance.
That's town council public hearing.
Sure.
I would say more of the town council purview than our purview. I mean, we can recommend it, I guess.
We would draft it
Okay.
for their consideration.
Okay.
Absolutely. We put it forth for their consideration. They have
Yeah,
a
it's just a
hearing,
fee. Yep.
but it falls to them.
So the fee in lieu of, right, like inclusionary zoning and allocating 10% or whatever percent, like that's our land use regs, right?
Correct.
the fee in lieu, is that still the council, because it's like a fee collection? Or can we?
It's gonna be both.
Okay.
Because, so when you get to the fee in lieu, the regulation is gonna be programmed by TPZ. So the percentage and how that gets set up, so at what, again, is it after 6 units of housing, then you require your affordable housing, or is it 10 units? At what point, how many units do you get without having to consider affordable housing, and then you're not even part of this? Then, okay, if you're doing 10 or more units, then this comes into play.
That was Stanford, I think, 10.
And then we're looking at the percentage if you're gonna buy out of the affordability requirement.
Okay.
But as part of that buyout, and we set up a fee in lieu program, then we will need town council, because we'll have to modify the, I've got to modify 2 parts of the town ordinance. We are gonna have to modify the housing trust fund.
Is that 13 or?
That's 12.
12, okay.
Well, I suppose initially we don't have to modify it. It just stay, and it would go, we would designate as part of the fee in lieu that it goes into the housing trust fund. I think globally, as we've talked, this needs to be revamped a little bit so that it includes maintenance, because right now it does not. Right, so we had talked about that. And then Section 31 is the housing authority, and I need to, work with Nancy Parent, on that, with her agencies, in conjunction with us, to make sure that everybody's, right, we don't want to get something put in place that the housing authority can't manage.
Just a question on the maintenance part. So, thinking about Maple Village, for example, what properties would use, how does maintenance occur at Maple Village now? And then, or what properties would tap into this $12,000, to use your $10 for 1,000 square foot example? Like, when we're thinking about the existing, how do I think about that? Does that make sense?
So I think for maintenance, we'd have to program, and that's what I'm trying to, we're looking to find other ordinances that have maintenance in it and how that's been programmed. We have, I mentioned the meetings that we're having with CROG and Sustainable CT. So we had our work session meeting last Monday, then I had the CROG Sustainable CT cohort meeting last Wednesday. And so one of the things we asked for was sample ordinances and maintenance, and how that all comes together. Ideally, I think because Maple Village is a town managed, I don't know.
Is the federal government involved in that at all?
Yes, and I can't explain to you how, we would need Nancy here.
Okay, I was just wondering, familiar with one
At some point,
project in
we'll-
Granby. My mother was
We had
involved.
her in, but yes, if we're digging into this more and have other questions, or I could see if she's available, she can join us.
I don't need all the details,
Monday night.
I just was wondering.
Yeah, I don't, so the intricacies of that,
Which is very intricate, I know.
I don't, understand all the funding streams and what's available to them for funding and maintenance and all of that. I know there's some grants, and some of the things have taken place with grants, but Nancy would have to answer that. So, my initial thought would be no, is that like Maple Village would not be, eligible for access to this housing trust fund money for maintenance, because it's maintained by the town and I think comes under some other umbrellas.
Okay.
The thought would be is that this is for folks that are, own, so like our Snowberry Cobble and Cornerstone, where they own their units, but it is, they're eligible for that ownership because of their low income, or their lower income, right?
Got
But so they can get in, they've got enough money to get in and cover the mortgage, but it's when, now after 20 years, I bought it in year 18, and now my roof's going, I'm in year 22 of the house, but I can't afford a new roof, right? So it's figuring out how to help with that. And for Nancy's, for the co-op program, where the town owns the land and the homeowner comes in and gets the mortgage for the home. Some of those houses have been around for quite some time. And so in that case, it would be, you know, Nancy then would work with the homeowner to say, okay, hey, this is available for a new boiler, a new HVAC, or new roof, or siding, or whatever, or like, hey, this 70s kitchen, like, it just doesn't make sense, right? And so it would be figuring out then, how is that paid back? Is it a loan that's, then a lien is put on the property, so that at the time of sale, then the town gets paid back? Is it a no-interest loan? Is it a whatever? You know, I don't know how all that works, so it's getting a little more information on some communities that do that and how, but there's definitely a need. Cornerstone and Snowberry, we hear it from Cornerstone all the time. The HOA is like, we gotta get roofs on these buildings, and we're like, we're sorry, you know, we've put them in touch with Nancy to see if there's funding mechanisms to help them, because we don't have anything for that. So,
That makes sense.
If you get one that has like a burst pipe,
Right.
right next door to somebody that isn't, and they don't have the money to fix it, now you're ruining two.
Right.
Sooner or later, you're gonna have to fix it, so that, I think the best option is probably that, loan them the money, put a lien on the property.
Right, so presumably, hopefully for something like that, there's insurance, but yes, I mean,
If they're subsidizing their rent, do you think they have insurance?
no, well,
Or they might not.
I guess it depends, yeah.
I know someone that lives on Maple Ridge, and it lives in one of those buildings where homes that you don't own the land, and they had the funds, thank God, and just recently replaced their roof, which was awesome.
Right.
But not everyone can, right?
Right. And again, it's finding other funding sources.
Extending the public support into sort of non-public affordable housing areas, because we were assuming like Maple Village, like that's already kind of publicly supported.
Correct,
Yep.
correct.
That's fair.
Westerly, that development is publicly, New Horizons has their own grant systems and things, right? So it's these other ones that are kind of just at that weird flux. And of course, someone would have to, so this is also comes into where the homeowners, they have to meet the affordable housing criteria at the time they purchase the property. So we get, say Yukon residents come in and purchase the property, well, they're getting their flat stipend as a resident, and then they finish their schooling, and their salary changes when, if they're full doctorate or however that works, so they don't qualify anymore, right? But because they purchased, they qualified at the time of purchase, that's it, it's a one-time qualification. They would not qualify for a loan right here, right? So somebody that needed a loan would have to demonstrate that they still met those same income needs, in order to qualify. So it's, again, it's getting all that into, and how much of it goes into an ordinance versus it's a supplemental information or ruling that the housing authority just operates under, so,
So we like the linkage fee idea, right? It needs to be vetted out. Now, for process-wise, do we, like, in future sessions do that? You know what I mean? Like, help me, or do we just keep going through all these different things?
so, like, as far as what's, so the linkage fee, we
Yeah.
can look into, that more, probably the Garrett part of we.
Okay.
We will look
So
into
just
it.
correct, so the linkage fee is just commercial development, non-residential development, adding a fee to that to help with affordable housing.
Well, like,
Addition.
Yeah. Is that fair?
We talked about additions and,
well,
Or
Or it
separate,
could
the
be
linkage fee is, or we just increase the building permits and then take whatever percent towards the affordable housing trust, right? And then the third leg is just inclusionary zoning fee in lieu for new or converted residential development, right?
So there's a couple ways. So one thing, I think Stanford charges a different permit fee for commercial versus residential. The residential fee is lower.
Right.
Theoretically, it's less of an impact for that, if it were, if they increase their fee to cover the 10%,
Understood.
it's less of an impact.
Understood.
If you're looking to do just the ordinance revision, then that would be, we would determine whether, what percentage you think is acceptable, how much the building permit would need to increase, whether you're going to switch it into commercial residential, whether, I think, so New Canaan's is the one that, it's just flat, it's just 10 on every 1,000. Yeah. Right, Stanford's is a little easier because they have it separated between commercial and residential fee, so that it's easy to put that in a different bucket, because you have a different fee calculated. So like our building permit fees, you can separate it, theoretically, on the application, we can separate it into commercial and residential fees if we set that up right when we're paying them, as a commercial building permit fee versus residential permit fee, as opposed to just the permit fee.
Sure.
Fair to ask Garrett, you to like draft something, or not really? Okay.
Yeah.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know the types of building permits, you know what I mean? There's certain ones, don't, like
Yeah, I think-
Bobby said, like a fence probably doesn't apply, right?
No, so we don't, fences don't require a building permit, sheds under 200 square feet don't require a building permit. Sheds over 200 square feet do, but do we think that, does someone adding a shed to their property but that's if we're charging a fee with the building permit.
$5, $10, right, in theory, based on $1,000. I mean, I guess what,
I mean, it's-
what do we, what's
About a 200 square foot shed, you're probably paying about 10 grand, so you're
Okay.
talking an extra $50.
I guess so for that 10 grand, what dollars spent by a homeowner do we wanna sweep into this fund versus what dollars does a homeowner spend that we don't want to? If it's right, does the project, just thinking about project threshold, does the project have to hit $50,000 for this new fund to kick in, right? If it's, Bobby, your $10,000 shed, like, okay, we're not gonna charge you the extra $10 for every $1,000 because it's a smaller project.
Do like them and do a homeowner is 5 and commercial's 10.
Or split it up based on the category of project.
So with exclusions built in, like you were talking about, so Shannon, you said that it was 1.2 million. Was that the town's benefit? That was the fees total?
That was the total building permit fees collected in fiscal year 21-22.
So
That's the last set of data that's been posted. We're currently doing the annual report for 22-23.
so if we take 5% of that, that's 60 grand, right? So if we increase with exclusions, the building permit fee by 5%, that would essentially be the same thing.
Is there a breakdown of that 1.2 million?
There is, yep.
Like how much of that is sheds? and
Oh,
toilets?
well, I don't know
That example. Probably are not even.
No, but I think it's a good,
Right,
like,
they probably haven't got.
how many
it.
small projects versus like,
The problem is, and this is where you're gonna look at it, nothing's a small project anymore.
Sure.
You do a kitchen's 60 grand. A bathroom's 30 grand, you know what I mean? So you're renovating your house like everybody did during COVID because they're standing around and they're seeing all these problems they have to fix. You're dumping 50, 60 grand into your house and nothing really got done.
And you're not pulling us.
You know?
I think part of it would be, we're not just gonna keep the building, if we were to charge a fee, we can't keep the building permit fee at $15. Yeah, because that would now be taking away from
Yeah, I think
money
we'd
that's already been.
have to, we'd have to
I'm not gonna
increase.
divert the existing.
No, I'm saying part of that would also be looking at surrounding towns, what they charge for building permit fees.
Right. So using John's example, if it's $60,000 for the project and we increase it by 75 cents, that comes out to $45 difference for the person pulling the permit.
Yeah, well, no, you can see the screen. Shannon is going through it to see if we can, break down.
That's how it's broken down.
Yeah, mostly building.
AC was the big one.
Right, and I would say part of that is, one of the mechanisms for permit fees is that the general contractor can pay the flat building permit fee, but it's for the whole scope of work. So if you apply for an electrical permit, like if you're paying someone to replace the outlets in your kitchen, that's an electrical permit. But if they're replacing the outlets as part of your whole kitchen remodel, that would get lumped into the building permit fee. So it's the GC pays the entire fee for the entire value of work, and then when the subs apply for the electrical permit, they put value of work 0, and then I'm a subcontractor for a GC.
Yes.
So where are we landing? We're gonna see what other towns are charging?
Yeah, so I can look at that. I know, we'll look at, like I said, I know what Plainville's is, I know what Sanford's is.
Maybe like around here,
Yeah.
like similar sizes, or,
Yeah,
Oh, my
yeah.
God, 'cause
We'll look at
The
it.
average permit is almost $500, like just the math, right? Almost $500 per permit, and I guess you could do the math.
Yeah, it varies though, right? Because the high school, well, the high school
High school
was
is paid,
paid,
but
was
the
state paid,
education
but
fee.
so like Trump, right? Trump's got a building expansion on, and it's a couple $1 million,
Sure.
right? And then you also have somebody that puts
Kitchen on.
Yeah.
on the house, right? So it varies widely,
Yep.
yeah.
When was the last time we raised our permit fee?
The 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like,
No, and it's not something
out of
that,
realm to say you just raised it last year, now you're raising it again.
Right.
I mean, it's been $15 for
Right, and I
30
think-
years now.
right, and I think part of that is, obviously, staff would make the presentation to town council of why the fee needs to be increased, what's the reasoning, what's the comparison of neighboring communities,
Yep.
or similar communities. Communities is probably a better,
Yep.
um,
Right, but that's not
And then
something,
saying-
again, that's a little outside our purview, right?
I thought it's part of what we're talking about.
Vote on it, like, we can't.
no, but you would vote to make the recommendation to
Yeah.
town council. And that would be the support.
And the ordinances.
And it's still in line, right, it's still, exactly, it's one element of an implementation of the affordable housing plan, even though it's not something you have direct ability to enact.
Right,
It's still a recommendation then from this body to town council.
because we cannot do this in a vacuum.
You can't,
So,
nor should it, I mean,
definitely, it's gotta be a holistic.
And do we know how we compare? That's something we'd have to check, right? Like, how does Farmington's building permit fees compare to surrounding towns?
Like, total or just the per
I mean, in
thousand?
general, like, let's say Canton, what is theirs, and, you know,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
are we
that's something we can easily,
what they're charging,
Yeah.
like on the 15,
Yeah.
and they are, so that's, he said Plainville's at 20.
Plainville's about $20.
I don't know what,
I think it's 25 for the first 1,000, 20 for the after, I don't remember.
One of them has like 50 for the first 1,000.
I think that was
and
New
then-
Canaan,
And then it's
it's
graduated.
like $10 for the second 1,000.
Yeah, it's really weird, so,
Okay.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting to know.
More expensive projects get a little less.
Right.
I think when you do the math, it ends up being the same, it like balances out for a large project, it ends up like balancing out. Because if you're charging,
We're all set for the fee for now?
Building.
yeah, so some towns charge, I think it's a higher fee for the first million. I think Stanford has a different for the first million versus over $1 million.
Right, like,
And then some towns also have a minimum.
Yep.
I think New Canaan's is a minimum of, that's why they have it. Instead of having a minimum of $50, it's just the first 1,000 is $50.
From 0 to.
Right.
0 to 1,000.
that's gotta be mostly residential.
So we're good for
Yeah, electrical
this
outlets.
topic? Yes.
Yeah, no, I like the direction.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Can I ask, before we go on to something else, I need like a thumbnail, minute and a half, New Horizons. I kind of don't understand what New Horizons is. Is it a separate entity? Is it state-run? Is it privately run? Is it town-run?
it's not town run.
I didn't think so.
No. It's not town-run. Actually, there's a pretty good explanation of it on their own website. So
Oh,
New
okay.
Horizons has a website, and it runs through everything.
It was Hartford family, didn't donate it to land.
Okay, so I don't have all the history, so I don't,
Okay.
I don't have all, because I don't have the whole spiel memorized, but I do know that it's on the website. There's a whole history of it and how they operate. The residents typically are on Medicaid, and by virtue of that would be considered low income. And this
Okay.
is an affordable housing by virtue of that.
Uh-huh.
Through that, they have state and federal grants that assist with the total operational cost. So the residents pay rent or a fee based on their income,
Okay.
right? And then the rest is supplemented from state and federal grants.
Okay.
And those declarations, because there's rights and responsibilities with all of this, right? So there are Department of Housing declarations that are recorded on the land records that stipulate how those grants are to be managed
Okay.
for New Horizons, and stipulate how they have to work with and assess their residents with respect to the things they provide to them, and also how the costs and housing. There's two that I've looked at recently. They're like 10 or 11 pages each of two grants that were recently done in order to build the new wing that they just constructed or are completing. But it is privately run.
Okay.
Is it like a really, like a heartwarming story,
Okay.
how it got started? Yeah, check it out, it's,
Yeah, on the website, so,
Okay.
yeah.
It's just, I've heard of it, and I
Yeah.
just don't know.
Sure.
What's the name of the group that did a presentation? I forget now, it was back in like in March, but, Connecticut, or what was it's when we were going through all this.
Desegregate
Is
Connecticut.
it Desegregate Connecticut?
Yeah, they came in and chatted with us.
Okay, and their message, like what they were talking about was starting some kind of board, right, of some sort at the state level?
Well, they're looking, right, and they were really advocating with the legislature, making legislative changes for the housing.
Right, and their message was that really they want to almost, start this board, if you will, right, of people, and really it's nothing more than a group of people that helps developers navigate different subsidies, correct? Isn't that?
That's the idea, yes, because particularly, right, so for inclusionary zoning for a developer that already does affordable housing, it's not as complicated, but it's a known path to navigate. For someone that doesn't do this regularly, and it's somebody that just comes in and does a 20 or 30 lot subdivision, or one small multifamily complex, but say they're at 15 or 20 units, and now we're telling them that 20% of them have to be affordable.
Right.
Well, how do I finance, right? How do I finance that? How do I manage it? What are my there are real legal obligations for managing this under 8-30G, and paperwork and notifications that have to go to the state annually. This isn't one of those that you just do it.
Done. You moved in, I'm done.
Right, or I'm like, okay, well, so-and-so's moving out because it's July 1st, and we're gonna have any John Smith come in and re-rent that space. So there's real learning curve for a much broader population in the development community, right? Of having to now figure out how to implement these requirements that most, right, or whatever, that, I'd say 80% of the developers have no idea how to do, how to navigate that, right?
Yeah, and that's, that was interesting, because I feel like that's, when you talk about, affordable housing, we're talking about bringing in money from somewhere, right? And that's the objective. And for a developer, it's pretty simple, right? You have your building permit line item,
Right.
roofing, your shingles at the end percentage that I wanna work for, you know?
Right,
So it just, the house is gonna go up by a few bucks, that's it.
right, right,
but like
but if
if-
that cost is fixed,
Right,
right? Now, all of a sudden, you fix that cost, or that, whatever, that fee that's coming back to you, but all these other costs have stayed the same, it's like, okay, well, now, how does that work? And so that's where the chief of funding comes in, and a variety of other things, so that's, you know, Jeff Sagers, that he did it at, 80 South
and he
Road.
didn't get that, or he?
He did.
He got his funding.
He got the, oh, yeah, he got the funding, he was one of the top ones, so,
Uh-huh.
he got the funding, and I've got construction drawings on my desk.
I was just wondering where we stand.
I got construction drawings.
Not much was, there was a lot proposed, not much was really done though, this legislature season.
Mhm.
But I know that they definitely got the governor's ear, this group, but they were not able to implement.
Mhm.
But I think it's exciting.
Yeah. It would be interesting that, getting back to that developer, I'm assuming Jeff would probably be one of those that you might talk to. I mean, that's just a
Absolutely, yeah.
guess.
No,
'cause,
no,
you know,
no.
he-
Yeah.
Obviously, it's all about navigating the system, right? So somebody like Jeff, you know, I don't know, right? We do all market rate. It's that simple. I mean, you know,
Right.
you basically charge what you can, because there's, you know, the residential market is just such a roller coaster that
Right.
if you don't make what you can here, you don't weather the storm down here, and
Right.
it goes in cycles. But for somebody like Jeff, I always wonder, you know, how much of that, you know, he's got these affordable properties, and how much of that is funding from outside, you know?
Right.
So,
Right, yep, to figure that out, it's a whole
Yeah.
different ballgame.
Right.
Yep, yep, no, he's one of the individuals I need to chat with.
Where's he building those himself?
Next to the fire station.
Oh, that's right, yeah, we walked that,
Next
that's
to
right.
East Farm Fire
Yeah,
Station.
that's right, we
Yeah,
walked
you would
that.
have seen it for,
Yep.
wetland standpoint. Yep, yep.
Okay.
So we can look in, at the linkage fees and follow up with a few more. We probably won't have a full draft for Monday. But what we might be able to do is get a little more research on how some other communities are functioning, like what are their building permit fees? Is it a separate line item? How are they getting in? And where does it get funneled to their housing trust fund? Is it just a percentage, or is it a separate line item fee that comes in? So we can try to look into that a little bit. You're out Friday. Big day tomorrow.
and also, is that part of that, you're gonna check on, where we stand in terms of how expensive ours are?
Yeah, we'll try,
Comparatively, yeah.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, where do we rank from building
Right,
permit
right.
fees? Yeah.
Comparable towns.
This is just probably the broad strokes, right? Because there's a lot that needs to be ironed out.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm sure everybody in town, I'm being facetious, but people will probably want to know, where is this money going?
Mhm.
How is it going to be used and all that?
Yeah.
So, good, thank you for doing that. All right. Thank you, Matthew, for bringing it to our attention. I never heard of the whole linkage fee prior to you sending the information.
Yeah, no problem. It's very interesting. Definitely part of the solution.
Making a note for myself. And the brain is not functioning at full speed, I apologize.
7:15, man.
Yeah, no, we're definitely wrapping by 8.
Yeah.
Not earlier.
Well, that's why the Tuesdays after the Monday.
Yeah, you're right,
Definitely not
that was
available
not
for
gonna,
me.
yeah, that wasn't gonna
Those were
fly.
not happening.
That wasn't gonna fly well. So, so then we're looking then at just the inclusionary zoning regulations themselves. So I've added, and I just added it, so anyone that looks prior to like 4 o'clock this afternoon wouldn't have seen it. But I just added in, Fairfield is just an inclusionary zone fee. They haven't found yet an inclusionary zone regulation. So they just have the fee, theirs is 5 per thousand construction value into the housing trust fund. It might be interesting, Garrett, we can make a note to pull Fairfield's ordinance, or for the housing trust fund, that says constructing, rehab, or repairing affordable housing to persons and families low and moderate income. It might be interesting to see how they manage that in Fairfield. It might give us a glimpse into some options for us.
So for inclusionary zoning, we're saying you have the option to build X number affordable or pay a fee?
You have to build X amount.
It depends on how you,
We get to decide.
yeah, it depends on how you,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
define it.
Okay.
It can be, you include affordable housing.
Yeah.
If you don't, you pay a fee. Or if you include affordable housing, you can get more units, or you can just buy those units at market rate and you get the density. That's how Mansfield has built up theirs, because they just had developers, I'm gonna pay the fee, I'm gonna get more units per acre.
Okay. I like what you just said, so hold on. Can you say it again?
So it's either affordable units are required, or you pay a fee.
Yep, so hold on. I'm gonna.
Option one.
Yeah,
Option one is you include affordable units, or you pay a fee.
Yep.
Option two is you can get more units for including affordable housing. I guess there's three, so there's more units for including affordable housing, you just do the standard market rate, or you can buy more market rate units. So you pay the fee and get the higher density units.
So sort of density bonus?
Yeah.
Right, the
Right,
Patrick's
so the
point
density
about the
bonus-
line items is, well, I'm gonna add 2 more units in at the top to help with the extra fees at the bottom, or the extra, like, market rate.
Because the
affordable fee.
infrastructure becomes divided out then over more units.
So, right, and then that density bonus, right, the developer's a little more attracted to do a type of property like that, because they can squeeze in a couple more, whatever number of more
Right, and,
market rate.
right, and then the town gets more money, and then that goes
Right.
towards, eventually,
Fund, whatever fund.
yeah, I know Mansfield's got some pretty big pavements that they can now do a project. It's not just a revolving loan fund, they can do a project to build more affordable housing.
So when we talk inclusionary zoning, knowing what's available, right, makes sense? What's available? There was like 1%, what's it?
Well, again, as far as available land, yeah, so the available land is limited. But again, there's limited available land, but there's redevelopment opportunities.
So new construction or redevelopment, okay?
Yeah, and like you said, people, obviously developers will get more creative on, like you said, how to, they're gonna purchase a couple houses, maybe one this, and then sit on it and kind of
Wait
watch the
for-
neighborhood. Yeah,
right,
and then
wait
eventually
for-
go in, yeah.
Different than how the medical campus has grown, right?
Well, I'm
Those were
just
all
thinking-
single-family homes and farms,
Right.
right? And the Marriott conversion, so,
So,
there's an opportunity perhaps in Unionville, yeah, so, so there's,
would be a zoning, this is not an ordinance thing, right? This is a zoning
correct.
regulation.
The zoning regulation would permit the density bonuses, the ordinance would dictate what the fee is. So all fees are in the town ordinances.
Land use regs would require X% of units to be, quote, affordable, right? That,
Right.
okay.
And dictate how many, what's the
Whatever
density, if you're,
density is.
right.
And we just have to decide on our threshold of, is it 5 units, is it 8, is it 10?
This is where the panel will be interesting, what feedback you get.
And it also depends on the zone. I don't think we're gonna start cramming in affordable units in the R80 zone.
Do it across everything.
Well, that's one thing,
Well,
right?
No,
if there's no sewer.
right, no,
Moratorium, right, yeah,
Right.
so we've got and we have mandated, there's a sewer exclusion zone, so obviously this wouldn't apply, right, so.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's in the that's in the POCD, that's required.
Sewers.
A sewer avoidance area. So areas where you're not gonna extend sewer lines.
So what, as an example?
That already exists.
No, it's all
No.
septic, it's all septic system, it's up on, it's up in the northeast corner of town.
Eli Road.
So it's all on the, kind of the ridge and the trap area.
Right, all of the R80 zones usually.
Yeah, we would not extend sanitary sewer up there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, so, but because of that, then you're not getting in, affordable housing development there because of the density right? The density needed would overwhelm a septic system.
Right, so you can't do it, yep.
Right. Now, theoretically, that brings everything together. If you allow a detached EDU in the R80 zone, that theoretically you just build the septic larger, or you build it, depending on the size of the lot, you can separate the septic system. That falls into, that might work well in the R80, probably not gonna work well in the R20.
Sure, no, understood, right, yep.
Totally forgot about that, okay.
I just have one silly little question. In reading the Mansfield thing, what is a group dwelling? They use that term in their, let me make sure. I just, because they talked, well, that's what it was, but dorms are a part of a university, which is not
It could mean if the rooms are rented, so like a lot of the homes around Central, they're not, it's not a lease for the apartment, it's a lease for the room with shared amenities.
Shared common
Right.
area.
Oh, okay, I just had never heard that term before, and,
Yeah,
So there's,
okay.
because like, I know my son
And each
sleeps,
room has its own lease.
yeah, each room has its own, so it's
Oh.
it's a 4-bedroom apartment,
Uh-huh,
but it's not. So you have an apartment, you'd think one lease, it's not, it's a 4-bedroom apartment, there's 4 leases with a shared common area. So each of the tenants
So
has,
They
Okay.
pay their own rent
they
before,
pay their
yeah,
own
good.
rent, and so everybody's on, yeah.
okay.
so
At the
there's
same
company,
time, if you lose, if one of the
Someone
leaves,
bails,
you either have to pick it up or find somebody to fill it, or the apartment complex has the right to backfill it.
okay, and they
With
could
some other-
slide
they
some
could
random
slide,
person in,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
I know there's
Interesting.
companies that buy all the homes across the Central and do that.
There's a problem.
Assuming it's the same case in Mansfield.
Yeah, okay. I gotta go ask my daughter what she did in Burlington.
Yeah.
She went to school at UVM, and yes, we signed a lease, but I can't remember whether it was,
For the room or for the apartment.
right. Okay,
Yeah,
Right.
so that's probably what that's referring to, is a group home.
Okay.
And that it's not.
Mansfield, Yukon, yeah,
Well,
probably.
Right, that's what I was
or
thinking,
that
but it's
just
not
It's not related, right, individuals that
Okay.
are living together under a common, right,
It
common.
doesn't become a household or,
Right, or
okay.
common.
whatever you wanna, yeah, okay.
Different
Oh,
definition.
so it was just a term I had not ever heard of before, and I thought dorm rooms, but then that doesn't work, because then that would be school-related and.
Right, but,
Okay.
yeah, some people don't wanna live in a dorm, or juniors and seniors don't usually live in dorms, they wanna rent an apartment, so that's
Oh, yeah.
how they
So
get
let's
them.
remember to do like, again, like the fee in lieu, and it would be interesting to see on how it breaks down, right? Like how the structure works and what a developer does. Do they most often just buy out and we end up with a bunch of money? Or do we actually get the affordable housing that we're looking for, you know what I mean? So you're trying to draft that new regulation or whatever you wanna call it, so, and what you're trying to do is get them to do more affordable housing, because in the end, we don't have that much land left, right? So every time they build a market rate, that's an opportunity that is
So
lost.
zone, depends on the zone, right?
How many units would be,
Right.
what your bonus would be.
Yeah. Do we give developers an option, or are we just saying this zone, this is how, like, the options that
That's what, so that's the.
or is that what we're deciding?
That's the option of, you can get the bonus, or you just include affordable units. It's usually,
Right, but I see-
developers take the bonus and pay the fee
Yeah.
for the market rate, because they don't want to have to deal with the management of the affordable, where every time the lease is up, you have to redo the paperwork.
I see what Pat's saying too, is like, if you have to have 10% in town, and everybody says, well, screw it, I'll just give you the money and I don't wanna have to deal with it. Now you run
Or back
that
to the
problem,
same-
where you might not make that 10%,
Right, and
because.
we never.
Yeah,
you
we
know,
may
I
never.
mean, at some point, right, we have to put forth something obviously that works, which we might not hit that 10%. It's a goal, and it's some people you will talk to say that it's a very low-level goal, and that 20 or 30% is more accurate, right? So that's that's a whole other conversation. But even the money secured, right, helps hugely with the maintenance of what we already have.
Yeah.
And it would also, if we can start to get some momentum, the co-op program can get expanded. So Nancy hasn't purchased a new home to add to the co-op program in quite some time. So that's.
Not enough money.
There is some value to those. And those co-op homes, interestingly, then get kind of sprinkled throughout the municipality instead of in one development, as part of one development. So I don't think it's a loss. Yeah, I think from a percentage standpoint, I think if we're looking at inclusionary zoning, we probably want something over 10%,
significant, yeah.
right? Otherwise, there's not much point to it.
Yeah.
Anything that I have looked at to date, 15-ish, 20% probably makes the most sense. At 30%, you're an 8-30G, and they might as
They don't
well,
wanna, yeah.
they might as well just do that and say, heck with all your zoning and everything else. And, right, if you're gonna do 8-30G, then you're at that 30% minimum and just go with that and ignore everything else that we have here. Which we could take all this time, do the inclusionary zoning, do the fee and lieu program, we still have somebody come in with an 8-30G, which is
Yeah,
fine,
right.
which is what, Sager does, and that's fine. And crafts his own that's how we have 3 affordable housing regulations on the books.
And now, so Sager, him coming in with an 830G, okay, but it's not so bad for the town, right, because he works with the town. So in other words, you take an 830G and somebody can come in and really just butcher.
That's what happened in Simsbury, or they tried to do. What is it?
It's happened in Newington, with the same thing of, they just said, I can do it, yeah, exactly.
The ones that are going over by the bus station?
Is it pretty common? So Snowberry Cobble was 830G, you've mentioned Sager, but like, other than that, it doesn't come up very often, right?
No, I don't know, Cornerstone may have been via 8-30.
You think so? Okay.
I'm not sure how Heritage Glen, I have to look back to see if the other thing, 8-30G is from 1990?
Yeah, it was in the mid-90s.
So anything prior to the 90s, it didn't even, so it's all sorts of goofy.
He hasn't done much. I saw him getting coffee, a few months ago. Just said hi, as a regular person. He's so proud of that project, and it's the highlight of his career. It was so cool to hear that, yeah. What I have a problem with, and just in general, oh my God, I know. So, okay, project comes in, it's under these guidelines, we say yay, but then it takes forever for the project to get implemented. When do we, actually get this fee? Can we even count on it?
So, I think it would be at the time, so with what we're talking about for Garrett, obviously that's at the time of building permit, right, for that linkage fee that we just talked about. With this, inclusionary zone and fee in lieu, again, it would be at the time that they're filing, if there's Mylars to be filed, so depending upon what it is, right, if Mylars are getting filed, we'd have to take a look, again, I'm not sure how other communities do it, or if they wait, and it's a portion at the time that Mylars are filed for a subdivision, and.
Yeah, it depends. I think some cities that I researched, they do it phased in through construction, is that when you originally apply, a certain percentage has to be paid, and then, if you want your final electrical inspection, you got paid another 10%, final plumbing inspection, and then to get your CO, it's gotta be all paid up.
I can see this.
So no different than if somebody's coming in and actually building the housing rather than doing the fee, right? So Snowberry, there was a clause in there, he had to do, I can't remember, I think it was prorated, he had to start with the affordable, and then once he had 30% of the affordable, he could do 30% market rate, and then the next 30%.
Something like that.
Now, he came in and he's like, what, I'm all done. He did all the affordable, and then he's come back through and done the market rate.
Yes.
So the same type of thing would hold true, on the construction end, if they were actually constructing, that you'd say, okay, you're only gonna get, 10% of your building permits on your market rate until we start to see some of the affordable start to come through, and then figure out that math on that.
There's also statutory time limits on projects. It's the 5 years up to 10 years. So if you get a project approved,
we've seen them go longer.
right, it has happened twice already, yes, but the general,
Sorry, yeah.
general meaning is that if you get a project approved, and after 5 years you haven't built it, you can get an extension. There has been a case law that a commission denied the extension, this is fairly recently, because the developer had made no effort to start the project, and he just wanted to maintain his approval. And the commission, and they won in court for that reason.
Like our eviction law.
So the commission.
Yeah, the commission won on that. I can get you the case, it was recently.
Okay.
But like.
And the next meeting, Shannon.
Yeah, but with COVID, like, so COVID extended, COVID pulled a whole bunch of things. So
Yeah.
there's approvals, you know, that we're counting days
Yeah.
on a few things. So there's like,
Yeah.
some of these go out now to, like, the 19 Perry Street, like 14 years or something. I'm like, for
Yeah,
the love of God, if you all don't have a shovel in the ground.
Yeah,
No one will be around.
they did, the state legislature did it with the 2008 financial crisis as well, so that was,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
changed it to 9 years with a 5-year extension, so 14 years total.
Plus the couple years.
Plus
of
the COVID tolling and all that
COVID
stuff, so if you
Yeah.
got I mean, there's dates where it applies, it's not,
You're counting on the calendar.
Right,
Right.
yeah, you've gotta have an approval, and then the approval had to be active by such and such a date, and then if it was active, then it told for like 330 days. We had calendars, or there was like
Yeah, that sounds fun.
3 or 4 times we had to go to Bob D. I'm like, is this still valid or not? I don't know anymore.
You go, figured out.
Back to, what Bobby and Patrick talked about in terms of thinking about units, right? Like, we'd want more units. Is there any towns in your research that just have inclusionary zoning and do not offer a fee in lieu? Where it's call it restrictive, however you want to say, it's like, you have to do this 10%,
Towns?
you can't
No.
buy your way out of it. Or you, right, I get, maybe that's not Shannon's happy medium, but I'm just curious if anyone else has done that.
I don't remember off the top of my head, I can double check. Yeah, some towns just say you have to include the units, and that's it.
Right.
It usually, the density bonus and the fee is to kind of,
Balance it out.
right, and the density bonus is to incentivize the developer to
Right.
include units. Fee is a bonus of the town gets the money and the developer gets their
Yeah.
income over however long they own the project.
Yep, okay.
I can double check, I don't think there's any towns that just did, it's usually a combination of both.
You know, it makes sense for the, I guess, the bonus part and then the fee parts, because you're sort of getting both at the same time, right?
Are
And
you
then
really-
then you're promoting, like, if it's just that restrictive, it's
Yeah,
hard
if,
to.
I would say probably if a town had that, they're not getting a lot of
I
development.
guess in
Right, that's the,
Just to
shut
play,
things
just to play
down
it up, is there certain, could you say in certain sections of town, no fee in lieu, but others, section, I guess we could do that if we
It'd be
want. I'm not
zone,
saying
it'd be zone-based, it'd be zone-based, so it's,
It has to be, yeah.
Because
you can't buy your
everything-
way out of it in this
Right.
section of town versus that section of town. Okay, all right, just playing it out.
yeah.
Because everything talked about, all the things talked about, you know, equal finishes, equal
yeah,
areas, equal placement, equal, you know,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so the finishes have to be the same. You can't use B-level finishes in your market rate and C-level finishes in your affordable, it has to be.
right,
Oh, that's a good point, yep,
right. And also location, you can't put them all in the back corner
right.
next to the highway, or and by the dumpster,
Yeah,
and then have everybody else, right.
or in the floodplain.
You know, another thing, again, jumping around, but it's interesting when you talk about density, because again, to me, a lot of it just comes down to density, right? Because in order to have a house being affordable, it has to be affordable to build it, right?
Right, right.
So,
Oh, definitely.
when you look like down south, or you look in Vegas, I mean, houses are 10 feet apart.
Yep.
Like, if you go through Snowberry Cobble, that's what's down there, right?
Right.
And here in the Northeast, it's not like that at all. Now, some of it is because of our terrain, right?
Sure.
Right.
So, but in other places, I mean, look how much we run into, you know, the not in my backyard type of crowd. It's like, it's always great, everybody wants everything to be affordable, but all of a sudden you put something, you know.
Next to your house,
But
but,
that's even zoned and following the regulations, and everybody's screaming, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Vegas is like Melrose Place.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, nuts. And they're big too, like bigger houses, but they're touching each other.
yeah.
They're affordable.
Backyard,
I don't think you can play volleyball in the backyard.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You mash them all together, there's no fence, yeah.
Okay, so
Where-
some action,
Yes, and
action
then-
items.
I don't know if you, Matthew, you have any additions, any comments? Sorry.
No, I'm all good. Appreciate it.
Okay.
You're so quiet, okay.
Okay, so action items will try and drill into building permit fee comparison to some of our adjoining communities, and with that, figuring out, of those adjoining communities, if they have linkage fees, how they're doing it, and if it's a separate line item or percent of their building permit fees. We'll look into Fairfield and others with respect to repair and maintenance in the ordinance, for their housing authorities. And we will start to look into, inclusionary, a little deeper into inclusionary zone and something that might start to work for us. And I'll carry over, we'll make phone calls to some of the developers.
Are we good for today?
I think
We're
that's-
like done? We're good? Because we're meeting next week.
No, I honestly think this is very productive, I think.
Well, thank Eric.
Yeah.
I thought that was really great.
Were you gonna say something?
One more comment, and
Yeah.
just because, again, this is an overwhelming topic, obviously, you know what I
There's
mean?
a
There's so
lot,
many
yeah.
angles and
Yeah,
trying to
right.
understand it. And I was just looking things up, like, you know, everything comes down to median household income, right? And in Farmington, ours is, I think, like, high 80s, 90, is it? You know, and then you go one town over in Burlington, it's like 110 or 120, you know, and how does that, you know, so I'm trying to like wrap my brain around, you know, here we are, we're trying to set so the affordable limit is gonna be lower here, so it's essentially easier to go build an affordable in Burlington than it is here, because we're going by median, you know, your median income. You know
For the
what I'm saying?
Hartford
That-
area, it's not for Farmington. It's for the Hartford area,
Oh, okay, okay.
Hartford metro area.
Okay, so it's not town by town, okay.
No, so our,
Bridgeport next to Fairfield.
Right.
single person, the 80%, I wanna say is like 75,000.
I think that's what it was,
But
I remember
for a
that.
family of four, it was like 102 or something like that.
Yeah, 102.6.
So
Yeah.
that's-
We're in the Hartford
that's-
County.
Hartford County,
So
okay.
that's Hartford,
Yeah,
yeah,
gotcha.
Metro Hartford area. So when we're evaluating, qualified purchasers for Snowberry or Cornerstone or some of the ones that aren't rents, they're actually a transaction buy and sell, you purchase the home or townhouse. Those are the income limits that we're using to determine, you've got to be, if it's a family of four, at 102,000 or less
Right.
in order to qualify. There's a few other nuances to that we work with, but that's what we're using. And those are the same income thresholds that Nancy uses. And so that's at the 80%. So then there's other housing that has, like some of the units that Jeff Sager has, he made reference, I think some of them are as low, I want to say it's 30%.
Yeah, I think,
There was an extremely low, or-
So some of them, right, because there's low income, there's very low and extremely low. So there's the 80, I think it's 80, 60, 30 are the percentages of the median family income.
Right.
So those are the thresholds. Most of what we look at that comes through us works at the 80%, median family income.
And we just look at,
Again, it's not, I thought it was town by town, and, you know, I was
Yeah,
trying to.
no,
Now,
It's like
does
you're
the
almost-
resale go by Hartford County too, or is that town by town?
So the resale, the sale price is.
Because
the-
that I don't like.
So the sale price is the lesser of, so whatever, say you purchased it in 2000 and you're selling it in 2020. Okay, so it's a 20-year. So they look at the percent increase in the consumer price index over that 20 years, and you look at the percent increase of the median family income for the same, that Hartford County region over that same 20-year period. Whichever percent increase
lower.
is lower is the one that then is applied to that purchase price in 2000 when you purchase the house. So that percent increase gets applied, and that sets the
Right.
maximum
So you're
sale
only,
price.
like you're only allowed to make 2% per year, or whatever it is.
Whatever the consumer price and median family income rate, right? And so those both, sometimes one's up, sometimes one's down, but it's whatever.
Is that set by us, or is that set by them?
It is set by the declaration, so that's set by the Affordable Housing Declaration that's on the land records. And it must tie to, I'm assuming Connecticut General Statutes and HUD, because it's the same wording that's in all, and same formula that's in all the declarations. So, yeah, and so that's what we have to apply, and it's in the declaration, so.
It just, it's a weird setup for, like, Snowberry, for example, I had one in there, and when they bought it, it was a foreclosure and it was ruined.
Right.
So they dumped 65 grand into it to.
You will never get it back.
Right, which,
And you'll never get it back, right, you're paying that money to live there,
Yep.
but when you sell it, you're not allowed to get it back.
No.
Because your neighbor got 225, you're still only getting 170.
Whatever
Because
it is. It
it's,
depends, because
right,
it
it's a
depends on
percentage of
what
what
you
you paid
purchased
for
at.
it. Exactly,
Right,
right.
it's based on what you
Right.
paid for it, and
Which
then
is kind of crappy.
it's goofy,
No,
but,
It's what we gotta do.
I know there's a development in Plainville that does, you get a certain percentage of capital expenditures over your ownership.
I think there's a small one in Newington like that.
Right.
yeah.
Newington and Berlin have a couple of different.
Later, keep track.
Those are standalone units that you purchase, so you
So
have to do the
Monday
roof,
is our next
siding,
meeting?
you have to do the windows yourself, it's not like an associate, yeah.
I mean, this meeting, right? Working,
On Monday.
yeah, work session on Monday. Matthew, will you join us? Will you be joining us?
Yeah, I'll be in on Monday.
Okay, cool.
Awesome,
Thank you so much.
The,
Thank you.
thanks.
Hey, can I say,
August
um,
session, I'm not